That's loud.
Yeah.
Should get started.
Yep.
Let's do it. Okay, good to see everybody. It's been a while. So, yeah, I thought I'd just tell you all about my week and kind of start there and see where the conversation goes, and open to this being really a discussion. But I'll just get us started by telling you about this last week and what was happening. When I was at KHN, there was an idea kicking around about starting some sort of democracy movement in Pennsylvania, some sort of thing to strike at the root of our broken decision-making processes, or fixed decision-making processes. You could also look at it that way. And going after, how do we make our decisions as a society? How do we make these collective decisions that govern our lives? And the answer is very poorly, as evidenced by the fact that the problems keep mounting up and they seem to go unsolved and unaddressed, and people are miserable. And Francis Moore Lepay, the author, once posed it this way: why are we all working so hard to create a world that nobody wants to live in? And so we have to go and look at the decisions that structure our lives, that govern our lives, and how those decisions get made. And to just put it really bluntly, they get made through money. I mean, that's just the end all be all here, is that it's kind of all oriented toward the green. One person in Congress once said, everybody here leans toward the green, and that doesn't mean we're environmentalists. It just means we lean toward the money. Another way of looking at it is we follow the wrong golden rule. Instead of love your neighbor like you love yourself, it's the guy with the gold makes the rules. And so our whole system is just kind of oriented toward money. It's oriented toward big money, toward organized money, toward the type of money that can show up in your district with $500,000 and drag your name through the mud 2 days before an election and knock you out of office, toward the big money that can come into your office and bribe you with unlimited anything and tell you do what they say. You know, it's the money that can be used as a carrot or as a stick, and it gets things done. That's the system we live in. So, for example, in Pennsylvania on the state level, there are no limits on campaign contributions. You can contribute anything to anybody as much as you want. At the federal level, of course, there are some limits, but there's ways to work around them. In Pennsylvania, we have unlimited gifts. So you can literally gift anything to anyone in office. The governor has a self-imposed gift ban, but that's just a rule. That's not a law. It'll expire when he does. And for the legislature right now, cars, cash, vacations, roof repairs, your kids' private school tuition payment, whatever they know that you want, they can gift to you. They can give it to you legally. Just to put some numbers on that, about $1.5 million a year in gifts is given to our legislature by lobbyists. And it includes anything and everything. So the money is really able to get into the system legally, openly, and systemically. It's how the whole thing runs. And so our goal is to separate money from politics, to take the money out of politics, take the private big money out of politics. And so that all starts with a gift ban. The gift ban is the lowest hanging rotten fruit on the money in politics tree. And, you know, to go after campaign contributions needs to happen. We are going after them. To go after the dark money, we need to do that too. But the gift ban is really just kind of the easiest first step. And by easy, I mean incredibly difficult, but still easier. And the goal is to convince a corrupt legislature to outlaw their own corruption, which seems impossible. So over the last couple of years, we've moved this bill along, and we've also won things along the way. Like vote by mail was a big win for us back in 2019. Getting that through a Republican legislature to be signed by a Democratic governor was a lot of fun. But the gift ban is the one that we're getting close on here right now. So we started about 4.5 years ago on the gift ban campaign, and we have the structure that the pathway we've taken is just to kind of identify the obstruction, clear out the obstruction, identify the next obstruction, clear out that obstruction, identify the next obstruction, clear out that one, and so on and so on and so on until everybody who needs to be on board is on board. And so what that means is we've knocked a white supremacist committee chairman off of the committee. That was Daryl Metcalf, so that freed up some room. We got the Speaker of the House on board. That created some more momentum. We got the majority leader of the House on board, through pressure. We got the Senate committee chairman on board through pressure. And just one by one, we've just kind of gone after these people and gotten them on board. And so at this point right now with the gift ban, we have the House State Government Committee Chairman, the House Majority Leader, the Speaker of the House, the Senate State Government Committee Chairman, and the Senate Majority Leader are on board, and that leaves the Senate President as the one person who matters who's still not on board. So that brings us to this week. So this week we went after Senate President Jake Corman, and he is money in politics made manifest in so many ways. There's something called side jobs, which is when a legislator holds a side job. They're a full-time legislature, mind you, but some of them have side jobs that have very large conflicts of interest. And Jake Corman sits on the board of directors of a bank, of Old Dominion Bank. So pretty big conflict of interest there. Anytime the state is deciding, should we tax rich people to fund the budget or should we borrow money from rich people to fund the budget? He obviously goes toward, let's borrow the money from the bank that I'm on the board of and we'll pay ourselves interest over time. Then, he has there's something called the revolving door, which is another way that money influences politics, where you basically get promised a future job offer in order to do the work of the private sector while you're still in the public sector. And so Corman's chief of staff was the head of Maverick Strategies lobbying firm. And before that, this guy, Christian Callahan, was the chief of staff for the Speaker of the House way back when. So he's spun through the revolving door again and again. And so Corman's office is very much part of Maverick Strategies. They're essentially the same entity. So again, who is he working for, right? He's working for the bank. He's working for this lobbying firm. When it comes to campaign contributions, he takes money from everybody to do everything: Comcast, Range Resources, the frackers, the insurance companies, everybody and everything. And so we went after him over the gifts. And that meant, I'm just going to walk you through Wednesday really fast here. And everything did not go according to plan. It actually all, we did our plan B, we did our plan A, then our plan B, then our plan B, and it all somehow worked out. So we started the day off with a rally out front on the Capitol steps. We had 3 huge banners that were each about 25 yards long that went across the entire width of the Capitol steps, pointing out that our legislature has failed to pass the gift ban, not just for the 4 years we've been working on it, but we traced the efforts back into the late 90s around the gift ban. And we found 33 gift ban bills had been introduced in the last 20 years, and none of them had passed. The furthest anyone got was getting out of committee in 2019, which was us. We pushed the gift ban out of a committee. And so we had a rally out front, and then we did 2 actions inside. And the idea was that one action is the diversionary action, where we draw the whole Capitol Police Force over to Jake Corman's office, where we're going to be inside of his office reading gift ban bills, all 33 bills, and they're so boring. I mean, if you've ever read policy, it's not entertaining stuff. So the idea was to kind of bore his staff, by just sitting in the office reading through all of these bills until Capitol Police would come in and remove us. But there was a wall of Capitol Police waiting for us, and the doors were locked, and we weren't able to get in. The second action that was supposed to be happening at the same exact time was to go into the Senate gallery and drop a banner that said, pass the gift ban or get out. Our messaging is getting much more direct at this point. It's just pass the gift ban or get out. That's what we want you to do. Those are the options. And then 8 scrolls going down the side of the off of the balcony that each had pasted on them the bills that they have not passed, showing these are all the opportunities you've had. But they know us too well. They're ready for us. So the police were waiting for us. We weren't able to get any of our materials into the gallery. Only half of our people got in. The other half got recognized and pulled aside. But they still did a disruption. And one of our people locked eyes with Jake Corman for a good 2 minutes and frankly just yelled at him from the gallery. And they had to stop a session and delay it. And but none of those people got arrested, so they all came over to Corman's office right after they got escorted out and dropped the banner right there again and made the point. The 4 people in Corman's office, outside of Corman's office, we got arrested for sitting in front of his door, and the Capitol Police took us downstairs. And I'm just going to quickly talk about the Capitol Police because it's very strange how this all goes down. And I know this doesn't match police forces anywhere else, and it's a very unique and strange situation. But it got to the point on Wednesday where we were down in the Capitol basement in the jail. And it's not a jail. They put us in their conference room, where they have meetings. And they uncuffed us right away, as they've done the last 2 times. They brought us water right away, as they've done the last couple of times. And 2 of our people were talking about, I think we're one of 9 states that doesn't have a gift ban, right? And the chief of Capitol Police goes, no, you're one of 8. We're one of 8 states that doesn't have a gift ban. I heard it on the radio this morning. That's what they said on the radio. And the lieutenant comes out and says, I don't support much, but we really support what you guys are doing. And the Capitol Police chief echoes that statement. And it's gotten to the point where we're realizing nobody outside of Harrisburg, nobody outside of Senate leadership is actually against the gift ban. And I really mean nobody. There's nobody who sits there and says, bribery should be legal. We should be able to bribe our legislators. Lobbyists for Exxon should be able to walk into the Senate president's office and give them keys to a brand new car. Nobody thinks that's okay. I'm yet to meet the person who says, yes, that should be legal. So it's to the point where the media are telling us that they're on our side. The police are telling us that they're on our side. The local sheriffs in Center County are telling us their corruption stories. And you start to realize that everybody's really united on this front. And this takes, I just want to kind of go on a side rant here for a second about politically independent organizing. We organize across all lines of division because we found that no matter where you are in the state, no matter your race, your gender, your geography, your religion, your culture, all of that stuff, we all have a very similar set of problems that we're dealing with. And these are problems of oppression by the ruling class on the working class. And that can manifest itself in your health insurance is way too expensive, your rent is too damn high, your kid's school is underfunded, there's potholes on the road in front of your house, you can't afford your property taxes, and you're giving way too much money to Comcast for awful service. Everybody hates Comcast statewide. It's just a rule. It's really a thing. And you realize that, wow, we actually have a lot in common. And when we hold hands and start moving together, we win. And so that's the idea of how we organize is realizing that, frankly, we're all pretty upset with how things are going. And we all kind of have an intuitive understanding of why things are going that way, because bribery is legal, because corruption is running rampant, because voter suppression is the norm, because we're gerrymandered into tribes and into pockets where we don't see each other. And when you organize on that level, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun. And the barriers start to break down. And you realize that it's not Democratic versus Republican or left versus right or conservative versus liberal versus progressive, that those boxes are pretty empty when you get down to it. And that it's really ruling class, working class, people who are profiting off of oppression and people who are losing money off of oppression. And that's the distinction that we operate in. That's the political dynamic that we operate in. And we follow the model of the Poor People's Campaign on that front, of that moral fusion organizing, of organizing across issues, across silos, across lines of division. And it's working. It's working because they'll often tell you, oh, just elect more people on my side and we'll get this done. When it comes to corruption issues, that just is not the case. It just is not the case at all. I'll tell you, I was talking with the number 2 Democrat in the House Wednesday morning, Jordan Harris. He's the minority whip. And he said that. And he was also saying that as while he was saying, I'm not going to support the gift ban. I don't think money in politics has any influence on anybody. It's offensive of you to suggest so, that I can be bought because I'm not corrupt. I said, we're not calling you corrupt. We're saying you're a human being. Everybody has their price. You're a human being. And then he told us, just vote for more Democrats. We're sitting there going, you just told us no. And when we asked you, why does Comcast not pay taxes? You said, because they create jobs, which is a Republican talking point. So we need to be politically independent. We need politically independent movements, because once these people get into office, they get bought, and it's not that hard. And in fact, they get bought on the way into office, because that's the only way you get to office, is taking big money to run your campaign. And so anyway, so we are very politically independent. We practice moral fusion organizing. We do a lot of lobbying, we do a lot of marching, and we do a lot of nonviolent direct action. And the goal is just to keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. And I've talked for a while. I'm just going to share one more kind of idea here and then really open this up, because I'd actually like for this to be more of a conversation. I'm a Kohen, and so the way I approach the capital is as if it's the temple. The temples that stood in Jerusalem, 3,000 to 2,000 years ago, and were destroyed, very much so because of our own corruption. Because we, as the first temple was on its way out, Isaiah said, "Your rulers are rebels, partners with thieves. They chase after bribes. The widow and the orphan's cause doesn't come before them." Right? That was the political culture near the end of the first temple, was just pure bribery, pure corruption. And when you have that, the widow and the orphan don't get hurt. Nobody except for the bribers gets hurt. And so you have the societal collapse that happens, this lack of trust that happens, where everybody is just indifferent toward each other, and problems go unsolved, and problems get worse, and people get angry, and bad things happen. And the second temple is the same exact story. There's the famous story from our Christian siblings of, Jesus chasing the money changers out of the temple. This was Jesus's reaction to a very, very corrupt temple, to a very, very corrupted system, was to chase the lobbyists out of the Capitol. And when we are in Harrisburg, the Capitol is the temple. It's our civic temple. And we, for better or for worse, there it is. It's where the power is. It's where the decisions are made. It's where people bring their sacrifices in the form of taxes. It's where things happen. And it's built like a temple. It has tall, marble columns. It has a raised rotunda with gold leaf everywhere. It's a temple. It's built in the same architectural style as an ancient Mediterranean temple. Big steps that go up to it. Very intimidating looking, and it is horrifically corrupt, and people suffer because of that. And so the goal is to go into the temple and chase the money changers out, to go into the temple and chase the lobbyists out, and to go in and say, this corruption is killing people. This corruption is hurting people. Because when Jake Corman, when you're in the Bahamas with the Pennsylvania Bar Association, which is where he was last January, you are not seeing the suffering in your district. You're not seeing the 1 in 8 children in Pennsylvania who lives in deep poverty. You're not seeing the 800 people a couple miles from his district in the Woodlands who haven't had drinkable water in a decade because of the fracking industry. You're not seeing the crimes that are happening. You're not seeing old people losing their homes from property taxes. You're not seeing underfunded schools. He's just not seeing it because he's chasing bribes, and the widow and the orphan's cause does not come before him. And so that's really the goal is democracy, to have a system of government where by for the people, instead of the lobbyists, by the donors for the money. I'm going to stop talking here and just really open it up to questions or discussion. What do people think? The goal is democracy.
So how does being a rabbi sit with the people that you're lobbying? Does it change anything?
Absolutely. So it really does allow for more independent conversation that's independent of the vocabulary of the political world, that doesn't rely on the vocabulary of the pundits or anything you're going to hear on TV. So those are the conversations they're used to having are through that vocabulary, through that lens, and to take it to a moral lens, to take it to a not necessarily non-political, but not the way they're used to being political way of being is very, very helpful. I'm definitely known in the Capitol as part of my language here, that fucking rabbi. Is that, a militant Hebrew school teacher is what one rep called me a couple of years ago. And it changes the dynamic. So like, for example, this was a couple of years ago. We had gone after that white supremacist committee chairman that I was talking about. And he wouldn't talk to us. He was telling all of his friends not to talk to us. And he really did not like us. He put out a couple of videos saying how much he didn't like us. And so one day went and talked to one of his friends, another representative who, for the first 15 minutes or so of the meeting, it was me and two other guys in there. She was literally biting her lip to keep herself from screaming at us. She was so upset with us because how dare we go after Daryl? How dare we protest? How dare we do this, aggressive type thing? And finally just got her talking about it. And she said, I don't take any gifts. I don't even know why you're in my office because I don't participate in this. And according to my Judeo-Christian values, I am only responsible for my own behavior and I'm doing great. I said, no, that's not how this works. According to Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, the entire Bible is an answer to God's question when Cain murdered Abel and God asked Cain, where is your brother? And Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? And the entire Bible is an answer to that question. And the answer is yes, you are responsible for what your colleagues do. You are responsible for what the person down the hall is doing. As Heschel said, some are guilty, all are responsible. And she got it. Completely got it right there on the spot, made complete sense. And she said, okay, I'll go talk to him. And she went and she talked to that representative and he yelled at her and that was that. But she talked to him. So being able to have that different vocabulary, those different stories to draw from is really nice.
I would like to know what other faith leaders you've been able to get to join you. Because I think, what's important is for you not to be seen as just a rabble rouser, that there is a morality issue here. And that's probably best served by not having just wild kids, but the elders.
Yeah. I'd say our main groups of support are the wild kids, the activists, the scrawny activists, who are doing good as they make their way through life. Then we have labor. You need some organized labor. So we have a division within the Teamsters that's been a great ally since the beginning, because it takes 8 scrawny activists to block a door. It takes 3 union guys to block a door. So you need those union guys with you. And then the third base of support is the faith world, the religious world. So when it comes to institutions, the Unitarians are some of our closest allies. And I think a third of our chapter leaders are UUs right now. They are great. They're also very geographically diverse, which is really helpful because, of course, the people who have the power in the legislature or who are given the power in the legislature by the even higher ups, they're often very rural. They're often in districts that activists can't get to or don't want to get to. So having a UU in Butler County and having a UU in Indiana County and a UU in Williamsport and a UU in York County, all of these areas that are pretty underorganized is really helpful. So we have the UUs. There's been a lot of rabbi support. Rabbi Diana came out to a march one time. That was great. I remember, I think you took us to a Dunkin' Donuts to use the bathroom. That was really nice. That was really helpful. I think he got donuts. Yeah, it was great. And then there's been some other rabbis, mainly recon rabbis who have joined in here and there. And then through the Poor People's Campaign, we have a faith leader team, we have a clergy team. And so that's also been a great help. We have, Lutheran ministers in the central part of the state and Presbyterians up in the Lehigh Valley and random pockets of clergy support, of faith community support all over the state. So we rely on them because Abraham, you're absolutely right. To shift the moral narrative, you need the moral leaders to be out front. And frankly, just to kind of give you some more info about how Harrisburg works. There is a group of clergy that are there. The Pennsylvania Council of Churches is the main kind of institution, but they've gotten close to the power structure and are very hesitant to rock the boat. So coming in with a group of more radical clergy has been really helpful to kind of push the legislators who are being told by one set of clergy that they're doing just great, and we're coming in and saying, no, you're not. No, you are not. But organized religion is really on both sides of the coin in Harrisburg. For example, the Catholic Church is awful. I mean, really just awful how they operate there. They spend about $1.5 million a year lobbying to cover their own liabilities. And it's a tragic, tragic ongoing story of all of the people from the Attorney General's grand jury report, the 1,000+ victims over the last 7 decades, who still have not gotten justice because the legislature blocks them at every turn. And the legislature blocks them at every turn because they're being paid to. And just to give you a sense of kind of how deep this goes, the Catholic Church's main lobbying firm is Nyquist and Long. Todd Nyquist of Nyquist and Long used to be Senator Scarnati's chief of staff. Scarnati was the Senate president up until a couple months ago, up until the last session ended. And Scarnati's chief of staff at the time, his sister was the head lobbyist for Nyquist and Long. So Scarnati and the Catholic Church were basically the same entity. And he did whatever they told him to do in really brutal and rough ways, including sending 6'8" bouncer looking people into reps' offices to scream and threaten them, including trying to knock people out of their elections, all the dirty tricks that they pull. So when it comes to kind of how does organized religion interact with Harrisburg, it's for good and for bad. Ezekiel, I think it's chapter 22, your politicians are like wolves, they devour the poor, and your priests give them cover. We have those priests in Pennsylvania who give them cover. So we need more of the Ezekiels to go in and.
I want to add that I have a lot of concern for how much the price you pay personally for doing this. It's been years. I know that you had this in mind when you were a student. You're a new Heschel to me in many ways, but that comes with a price. And you're a young man. I worry about that.
So there's an old poem, and there stood Horatius, captain of the gate, and he said, death comes to every man sooner or late. What better way to face those fretful odds than for the ashes of our fathers and the temples of our gods? And so that's the approach to life is you only get one life and it's got to be a meaningful one. And so this is an incredibly meaningful fight and fighting for what is right, what is true, and the fight continues. I do try to eat vegetables regularly and exercise, all that good stuff. And but there's a lot of work to be done. There's a big fight to fight, and what better way to live than to fight, than to struggle? It's fun. Yeah. I should say I've been seeing somebody, and my life is getting more stable. There's 2 little dogs in the mix now. Again, eating vegetables regularly. It's going well. But then it's also the team. I mean, this is not a solo effort in any way at all. And just a lot of people across the state who are putting their all into this. And we support each other and keep it going. And not just within March on Harrisburg, but also within the broader Poor People's Campaign. The community that's formed is beautiful and necessary.
Rabbi Michael, if I may ask.
Please, Rabbi.
And I'm enjoying your teaching, sharing all the very fascinating work that you get to do, and really influential in a way that many people would envy, I feel. I'm wondering, something that comes up a lot is I'll be watching like a video on YouTube, and then I'll get an ad from the Democrats telling me that I need to donate to them to to combat voter suppression right now. And one of the things that I wonder a lot about is, to what extent does the money that we give make a difference? And, you started off with saying, all politicians do follow the green in some way, and there are all these gifts that are driving politicians. And I'm wondering if you could reflect a little on whether giving money to particular campaigns really does make a difference to politicians who've already been decided by someone else's money. Like, is there a point when the money just stops mattering?
Yeah, I'm going to say something unpopular here, which is don't give to parties or candidates, unless it's a candidate that is on your ballot, somebody that you can vote for as well, somebody who's local. Don't do it. And I know that's going to ruffle some feathers here, but it's really, they don't need your money. They want your money. They don't need it. And there are groups that do need it, that it should be going toward. So the current, so what are the parties actually trying to accomplish? What is their goal at the end of the day? It's to win the next election, to push the other group back 6 inches in the endless trench warfare that is party politics. Their goals are also to protect the interests of their donors. And that doesn't mean you. It does not mean small donors. They couldn't care less about small donors. They say they care about them because they want your money, but they're not responding to your interests. They're responding to the interests of the big donors. They're responding to Comcast, not to you. And this is not one party or the other. This is the system that we operate in. For example, Joe Biden's first campaign stop after he declared his candidacy was to the CFO of Comcast's house in Mount Airy in Philadelphia. And he went right there, begged for money from all of his friends, and that's that. And you wonder why he doesn't do things like cancel student debt. You wonder why rural broadband is not a thing. You wonder why all these things just seem to not happen again and again and again, no matter who's in charge. And so, yeah, so candidates and parties will ask you for money. They would much rather just take the big money, and they will anyway. No matter what you do, they're going to still take that. And yeah, the incentive structure is just so backward. For example, that white supremacist committee chairman, I remember in 2018, early 2018, I went to the HDCC, the House Democratic Campaign Committee, the group of people that is there to elect Democrats to the Pennsylvania State House. That's their function, that's their goal. And I said, who are you running against, Daryl? Who are you running against, Metcalf, out in Butler County? And they said, why would we ever run anyone against him? So what do you mean? So, well, when we send out a fundraising email with Metcalf's name in it, that's our biggest return by far. He's such a good villain. Why would we want to knock him out? So, right, the incentive structure isn't really, he's a Nazi. That's why you should want to knock him out. He's a Nazi who's blocked every single civil rights bill over the last decade and a half in Pennsylvania, almost single-handedly sometimes. So that's why you should want to knock him out. But they said, no, why would we knock him out? That makes no sense. Right? So there's a lot of like a professional wrestling aspect to all of this. It's grown men pretending to hurt each other when no one's really getting hurt. Look at our current Lieutenant Governor, John Fetterman. He's been fantastic on marriage equality. He's been fantastic on marijuana legalization. But how do the donors feel about those issues? They're actually split on them. The donor class is split on those two issues. The donor class is not split on, should we have a Medicare for all system? The donor class is not split on curbing climate change. The donor class is split on those social issues, though. So Fetterman has staked out his position on issues that do not upset the donors at all, but polarize the public. And so those types of issues are what they press on. And so we end up voting for very important issues. Of course, marriage equality is hugely important. Of course, marijuana legalization is hugely important. But we end up voting on this small subset of issues where the public is divided, the donor class is divided, but we're not voting on the issues where the donor class is united and the public is united in opposition to each other. Right? Better work conditions. That's something where the working class is completely united on and the ruling class is completely opposed to. But you don't see these politicians who are taking big money get up into those issues. They just don't. They avoid them. They speak in platitudes. They talk around them. And what they do is they polarize us according to these wedge issues that are non-economic at the end of the day. And so when you're giving money into this machine, you're kind of just fueling the outrage. You're kind of just fueling the division and the polarization that doesn't really help us at all. It doesn't really get us anywhere at the end of the day. But when you fund movements that are politically independent, that are pushing the politicians, that are pushing whoever's in power, doesn't matter who's in power, this is the right thing and we're going to push you to do the right thing. Those movements are really where money should be going big time. Big time. They're so underfunded. They're so understaffed. Please give money to any Pennsylvania Poor People's Campaign organization. Put people first. Movement of Immigrant Leaders of PA, the Better Path Coalition, the Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration, ACT UP, March on Harrisburg, right? These are groups that are politically independent and that are pushing the power structure in the right direction, no matter who's in power.
What about common cause?
Yeah, Common Cause does good work. We work with them, and yeah, I definitely appreciate them.
Does it have to be either or? Like, you're sort of arguing that the Democrats don't overall do a better job than the other guys. And I don't agree with that. So is there not a way to, I'm not hiding my eyes, but I do feel support of that group is better. Can you?
Yeah, so I'll say I definitely vote for the same party you vote for, I think, at the end of the day. Not I think, I know which party you're all in. I know where I am. I know my audience. And I do think they're marginally better. But they're all part of the same boardroom, and Joe Biden is the nicest guy in the boardroom, and Donald Trump is the biggest jerk in the boardroom. He's the guy who just wants to liquidate all the company's assets tomorrow so he can take a golden parachute and run away. And Joe Biden is the nicest guy in the boardroom. He believes that workers should work, 50 hours instead of 60 hours a week, right? But at the end of the day, they're all still part of that boardroom. They all still represent that corporate mentality, that ruling class mentality. And so, yeah, Biden is definitely better, no doubt, than his predecessor. Absolutely. But we need to be able to elect people who aren't part of the boardroom, people who aren't part of that corporate structure. And the only way you get to run for president is if you can raise enough money from those people. So obviously you start to kind of compromise here and there. Oh, maybe I'll agree with them on this so that I can accomplish that. Or maybe I'll tell them what they want to hear then. But then you don't recognize yourself in the mirror after a while. And if people are interested, Joe Biden himself was on a great TV show in 1976, I think it was, or 74, where it's kind of like a public debate show. And the issue is public campaign financing. And Joe Biden goes out and he tells the truth. He's 29-year-old Joe Biden, right? He was a young guy when he came into the US Senate. And he says, I went to the donors in Delaware and they said, come back when you're 40, son. And so he goes, well, what I did was I then decided I'm going to be one of the token young people. Because in every election cycle, a few people can run races off of national small dollar donations. Bernie was the example last time around. But only a few people can do that every cycle. And Biden was able to do that to get into the Senate as the token young person. So he got young people all over the country, sent him a couple dollars here and there, and that's how he got into the Senate. But then he explains that you then go back to these people and you say, I need to run my reelection campaign. And they say, well, what's your thought on this? What's your thought on that? How do you feel about this? And you know what they want to hear. And so you end up telling them what they want to hear. And then you end up becoming like them. And you don't see yourself anymore. I really do. I'm going to try to look this up and put it in the comments here because it's a great video.
Can you say something about, like, even though we're mostly talking about Pennsylvania, but just to kind of make it a national thing about what happened in Georgia? And do you see that as individual giving or as part of movements, or how do you frame that to help me understand what you just said a few minutes ago?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, what happened in Georgia was great organizing over a long period of time. People really dug into an impossible task. All right, the idea that you're going to register voters in Georgia and flip that state is impossible 5 years ago. I mean, it's laughable. And they dug in and they built coalitions, and they really did. They did the work, and the work is hard, and it takes time, and it takes a lot of cooperation, and they were able to flip the state blue. the people involved, and I don't want to sound pessimistic here, are going to realize at a certain point that winning an election doesn't make your life better automatically. That just because you can flip one state in one direction doesn't mean, that the U.S. is going to stop becoming a warlike country, right? It doesn't. There's so much more that needs to be done to actually get us to do what's right. And along the process of Georgia flipping blue, a lot of the key people that we've come to know and love are taking a lot of big money to get that done. And when push comes to shove, I'd like to see how they vote when push comes to shove one day. I don't feel good that Stacey Abrams is part of the Council on Foreign Relations now, which she went into because donors told her, you need to be a part of this. And that's an organization in the US that has a terrible history of declaring wars on really weak countries. So, it's a devil's bargain. You needed a lot of money to flip Georgia, and in the process of flipping it, you got to listen to the money. Yeah. That wasn't really a well thought out answer, but the idea is basically, I'm curious to see how it'll go. It was a monumental effort to shift it. That same effort's happening in Pennsylvania right now, by the way. It just started. The new Pennsylvania project is just modeling itself off of the Georgia model. And it's when you become so aligned with a political party, you get burned. I mean, you're going to get burned by them.
So what I hear you saying is that what you believe in most are movements, so that a citizen isn't just about how you vote and which party you give monies to help elect certain people, but nothing will change if it's not being part of movements. Is that kind of where you're
100%. You got it. Thank you for saying yes, that's it. It's the movements, not the politicians. Politicians do not lead, they follow. They're followers. That's who they are in their hearts. The people lead and the politicians will follow. FDR did not come into office wanting to pass a Green Deal as expansive as it was. It was the labor movements that pushed him. It was the Socialist Party that pushed him. It was the communists in the US that pushed him really hard. And the New Deal was a compromise between the ruling class and the people in the streets. And we got to push them really hard to do anything. I mean, this is right. Just to give you a sense of how much you have to push them. I've gone to jail 5 times just to get them to give up their vacations to the Bahamas. You got to push them really hard to do the right thing. And that's where the effort should go, because we're told as a society, we're really beaten over the head with this, that voting is the #1 thing you can do and the most important thing you can do. By the time the election happens, you've already lost. I mean, if you have 2 candidates up there and neither one believes that healthcare is a human right, neither one believes that housing is a human right, neither one believes that the US should stop being the big bad empire in the world, well, you're voting for the nicer guy in the corporate boardroom versus the meaner guy in the corporate boardroom. But you've already lost. And so the movements are necessary to just change the playing field that we're playing on. So like our movement as March on Harrisburg, we're trying to change the way we even elect people, the way that they're treated once they get into office, the way that we draw our district lines to affect all of these things.
So you're doing all this work that you're doing, and the people you're surrounded by are doing all this work you're doing. And you're doing it because you're in a position of being able to do it, because you put yourself in a position of being able to do it. How can we as average citizens support the people that are doing this work? And because the thing that's going through my mind is materially, like, how do you live? Being a professional protester or professional movement leader person. And so both of those questions, I guess.
So the first question, how do we live? We fundraise, I'll say for most of the time, it's been month to month, 2 months at a time, really until about a year ago. That's how it was. So it comes with uncertainty, and it comes with a very low salary, and that's the life. We rely on donors. We rely on donors like you. We rely on a couple of foundations. But again, most of the foundation world is kind of geared toward ruling class interests. So there's only really a small subset of the foundation world that we rely on. Everybody go buy Ben & Jerry's ice cream. They are fantastic. They do support us. Actually, I just have this right here. Ben sent a check and he included this in the check. So we eat a lot of ice cream. And I'm sorry, what was the other part? Oh, how do people do it? Yeah, so I'm going to sound not as compassionate as I usually sound for this next part, but we all have hours in the week, and I know that we all think that we don't, but we do. They are there. We spend them on Facebook. We spend them watching TV. We spend them. We can make time, and I know that doesn't sound very empathetic or compassionate, but think back to striking coal miners who are working 16-hour days who still found the time to get it together and take on the bosses and win, right? It's possible. We can do it. And we rely on volunteers. We have 2 full-time staff, 1 part-time staff, and everybody else is a volunteer. And that's the labor that keeps it going. And the role of the organizers is just kind of make sure it's all kind of moving in the same direction and everybody's connected with each other that needs to be, and that tasks are getting delegated as they need to be. But the real work is done by volunteers. And some people have 1 hour a week and some people have 10 hours a week to give. And some people have 40 hours a week to give. I mean, they're mega volunteers. But even if you have 1 hour a week or 1 hour a month, there's things you can do in that time to really make a difference. And the deeper you get into it, the more hours get freed up, has been my experience watching volunteers, that you start to kind of look at your schedule a little more intensely and realize where you do have the time, what can give, what can't give, and make it work. And then of course there are people who have 0 hours, and that's a real thing. That is very much a real thing.
So those of us who have 0 hours, it would be nice to see a list that you would compile of the kinds of organizations, including your own, that could receive our support.
Can I just rattle them off right now? Would that be okay?
Well,
I should probably type it up.
Yeah, if you would. I mean, it'd be nice for us to have it that people can refer to, and at some point.
In the chat also.
And Abraham, I think that, and Rabbi Michael can correct me if I'm wrong, I think on the March on Harrisburg website, there actually is a list of partners there that I imagine would all be good folks to invest in. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's incredibly out of date, but it's still a good list. Yeah. That's on me. It's like knowing when an action doesn't go well. I'm the only one, me and 5 other people are the only ones who know that it didn't go according to plan. And for some reason I have to bring that up. And so it's like this, I'm the only one here who knows that list is out of date, but it's still a good list. And why does this even matter? And I just put some names of organizations into the chat too.
So you mentioned that you've been arrested 5 times. Can you walk us through what happens when they arrest you for something like this?
Sure. Because I do highly recommend that everybody on this call comes and gets arrested with us in Harrisburg one time. That's something, it is high intensity, but it is low time. It's a half a day, and only a couple times a year. And it's just great. Make the pilgrimage to the temple. Come see the hive of scum and villainy that is Harrisburg. So the first couple times are different than the last couple of times. They've gotten to know us. And so what it looks like now is we get arrested, they'll take us in. Sergeant Mustache will do the arresting usually. They'll take us in, he'll disappear, the other sergeants come in. They cut off our handcuffs, they use zip ties on us, they cut them off right away. For one of our Teamsters this time, every time for some of the Teamsters, what they'll do is they'll use multiple pairs of the metal handcuffs just because these people are so large that that's what's needed. And then, so we're down in jail and it takes about 90 minutes. They write us up a parking ticket, summary citation. It's literally a parking ticket. Hand us that and send us out the side door where we're greeted with, cookies and water, and that's it. And then March on Harrisburg will pay the fine. Comes out to about $150 to $200, including all of the court fees and everything. And that's it. One time they did try to deter us by ramping up the charges a bit, but they realized that just wasn't going to deter us at all. And so they just realized, well, why are we doing that anyway? So.
Rabbi Michael, years ago when you were interning, I remember asking you the question, just how did this all get started? And as I recall, you talked about how you were actually an intern in Washington with the Democratic Party. Tell us what happened.
Oh, what a summer that was. A swampy, swampy summer in DC. That was the summer of 2009. I was an intern in the finance department, the fundraising department of the Democratic National Committee. And I went in really bright-eyed and, you know, Democrats have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. And this is it. You know, it's time to do everything we've always talked about doing and make the world a better place and end the wars and, you know, guarantee healthcare and all of these things. And then it really just chipped away very fast when I was in there. You start to see that the orientation is not toward people, it's toward money and the people that have the money. So all of the attention, all of the adoration goes toward people who are not good people. I mean, I remember getting yelled at by Anna Wintour, the head of Vogue. She called one day and I didn't recognize her voice right away. So she screamed at me for 5 minutes. And then she gets patched through to the head of the DNC. Why are you getting patched through to the head of the DNC? Why are you such a jerk? And, you know, is this the reason why the Democrats can't do anything around sweatshop labor producing all of our clothes? Probably. Then things like, this was when the ACA was being discussed, when Obamacare was being produced. And you see the checks coming in from Independence Blue Cross and from, you know, Aetna and all of these big insurance companies. And then the public option is off of the table. It's just gone, even though 80% of the public supported it. Vanishes from the discussion. Things like right now, and I know a lot of what I say is very absurd sounding, but this is the way it is. It's a system of absurdity. The US government can't negotiate drug prices. So whatever Pfizer tells them the price of a drug is what Medicare is going to pay for that drug. Even, of course, that's why we pay more than any other country, even though we're the ones producing these medicines. We're paying way more because we are legally not allowed to negotiate. And the congressman who got that through was a guy named Billy Towson. And as soon as he pushed it through in 2006, he retired and became a lobbyist for Big Pharma. Anyway, I saw him and an army of lobbyists coming in 2009. And then all of a sudden, all the talks about, you know, that Big Pharma giveaway being taken away were gone. The debate ended. Billy Towson came in, said something, did something, gave something to somebody, made some promises, did all the dirty tricks that they have to do. And that was the end of that. And so that's still the status quo. And there was just issue after issue after issue where you could see it's obvious one side is correct here. You know, this isn't like a debate. This is greed versus humanity. And we just keep going with greed on every single front. And it's really frustrating. Even to get to marriage equality. So this was 2009, right? Obama had not come out in favor at this point. Neither had Biden. Most of them had not. And I remember sitting in a meeting in the fundraising department, and one fundraiser who himself was gay was asking people, okay, who are the rich gays that we know in Manhattan? We need a bunch of rich gays. We're going to put on a bunch of fundraisers up in Manhattan. We're going to raise a lot of money for these people, and that's going to bring them around on this issue. And that's what brought them around on this issue, was having Obama going to talk to rich gay people in Manhattan whose only interest, or one of their interests, was marriage equality. And you know, it's sad. It's really sad that that's the case. Yeah, it was disheartening. It was disillusioning. And it took me a couple of years to realize what I had even seen and then kind of piece it all together and make it make sense. But yeah.
So where did the economic benefit from legalized marijuana come in that changed the landscape?
Big time. As you'll see, former Speaker of the House, John Boehner, is a marijuana lobbyist now. The money is there. The big money is there big time. And just to give you a sense of, please don't think Boehner's a good guy. He was known for handing out checks literally on the House floor from the tobacco industry in the 90s. So he's not a good fella at all. But he got hired. They hired them. Big business is pro-marijuana at this point, which is why it's really happening. The movements pushed it far, and the movements are continuing to push it. But now that big money has jumped in, the fight's gotten a lot easier because Wall Street sees profit. They don't care about the social justice. They don't care that people are going to jail. They don't care that disproportionately Black and brown people are going to jail. They don't care about any of that. They know that, oh, this is something we can sell. And so they've jumped behind it, which is why Fetterman in Pennsylvania has jumped behind it. And frankly, if you look at the marijuana fight right now in PA, the Democratic side is kind of bought. They're starting to take money from these entities. And then you have the people who are blocking it, which is a small group of Republicans, because most of them are also on board at this point. And they're if they could run in the prohibitionist party, they would have, 100 years ago. But they firmly believe that. It's not corrupted. It's that's actually just what they believe. Our Speaker of the House is like Captain America. He doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, nothing. Cans his own vegetables, raises his own chickens, doesn't believe in the New Deal because he doesn't need it. These are interesting people. But yeah, marijuana is big business. Which is what
it's become that way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So what's fueling the other legalization movements? Because Colorado and Oregon have psychedelics and other things that they're starting to legalize. Is that going to become big pharma?
It probably will be, but the movement's got it to that point, and when Wall Street sees a chance to jump in, they do like to jump in. And one kind of key of who's driving the conversation, if you look at New Jersey's laws right now, there's no home grow. You can't grow your own, right? If you truly believed marijuana should be legal and available to people who need it, then sick people with cancer should be able to have 2 marijuana plants in their backyard to for their own personal use. That should not be an issue at all. But you cannot do that in the New Jersey law because they want you to buy from them. They want you to buy from their store. And if you can create your own, well, there's their money. I mean, that's it. It'd be like having your own solar panels and collecting sunshine instead of, having to buy gas. You would own, to get really Marxist here, you would own the means of production. And they can't have that happening. Massachusetts, there's no home grow. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? So you chose the state of Pennsylvania because you recognize so much so much corruption, but it's a specific state thrust. Do you feel like the work that can best be done? I mean, obviously, like some of us live in New Jersey. Like, is there a reason why statewide makes most sense to you, and what is that to do the work?
Yeah, the more local, the better, because you can have a bigger impact. So things that are happening on the federal level, call Mitch McConnell, but frankly, he doesn't care what you have to say. And what you have to say isn't going to move him. He's tougher than mule piss, this is what he says. And so focus locally because you can have a greater impact. So there's 64,000 voters in a Pennsylvania state house district. There's a little over 200,000 voters in a state senate district. And that means that if you organize a couple of those people in each district, you can throw some weight around and have an impact. Also, a lot of things are not done at the federal level. We're kind of, because our media has become so federal level, so national level, we're watching the national news, what's happening in DC, what's happening, blah, blah, blah. We've kind of lost focus of the lower levels of government where a lot still happens. If you just think Alabama and Vermont have the same federal government, but they're 2 very different places with very different sets of policies. And that's happening at the local level, and it's incredibly important. Everything in Pennsylvania, from minimum wage to gun control to environmental stuff to infrastructure to education funding to taxation, is happening at the state level. And so in PA, we decided to go at the state level. And we also work at local levels across the state.
But isn't it also true that things happen at the federal level once most local levels agree with it?
Exactly. Today is Loving Day, the anniversary of the legalization of interracial marriages by the Supreme Court. And that, like many, many things in our history, has started out as 1 state, 2 states, 4 states, 8 states, 12 states, 15 states, 26 states, and then boom, the federal government acts. And that's been the story for many, many, many things in our history, is that a couple states do it, a couple more see that it's a good idea. Marijuana legalization, for example, that's what's happening. Marriage equality is another one. Yeah.
So in any way, what you have been doing in Pennsylvania, has that by any chance become a model for others, particularly the religious leaders in other states, to use your model to create separate organizations in their states?
We're not really actively doing that at this point, just because there's so much work here in Pennsylvania. But we very much would love for March on Albany to begin, and for March on Trenton, and March on Annapolis, and March on Richmond. They'd have to change the name for Richmond. I think marching on Richmond might have Civil War connotations, but the idea of, we definitely are. We're the only group right now in the democracy space that combines the tactics that we combine, that does the direct action and the lobbying side. And we would love for others to pick that up. We also need proof of concept, which we kind of have with getting vote by mail through, but the gift ban, people want to know, will this make them give up their money? Will this make them give up their free lunch? And that's what we need to prove first.
So what are your next steps to eliminate the gift ban?
Yeah. So we're in a struggle with Senator Corman at this point. So what that means is we're going to keep escalating through the summer and into the fall. So on the outside game, what that looks like is we put up yard signs at his golf course last week. So we'll be going back to his golf course and probably just sitting by the 18th green and heckling him a little bit this summer. We're going to organize all of the workers who work at his golf. So first you have to find out, what do these people care about? And of course, he cares about golf. He really, really likes to play. He holds his fundraisers there. He goes to Pebble Beach and Palm Springs to raise money from other rich people on golf courses. He doesn't belong to a church that we know of, so his church is his golf course, as far as we can tell. And so we're going to be interfering and disrupting with his golf game this summer. We're also going to be protesting. I know some of our tactics definitely make people feel uncomfortable, but we do know where he lives, and we are going to do some wake-up calls at some point later in the summer if he hasn't come around. We're dropping yard signs all over his district and billboards, and just getting the word out to his voters. And then we're also organizing a chapter out in State College, out in Bellefonte, to churn that from the inside, because you need that presence on the ground in the district to keep the work going, to keep it moving. And then on the inside game, everybody who has a relationship with him, we're just telling them, go talk to him, go talk to him, go talk to him. So on Wednesday, when we disrupted from the Senate gallery, we positioned Senator Brewster right next to Senator Corman, because Brewster has a relationship with Corman. Brewster has introduced a gift ban bill every year for the last 10 years that, of course, they've gone nowhere. Their districts are right next to each other. They know each other. And so we asked Brewster, can you just stand next to him and be a calming presence? Because he's going to get really angry. And just let him know, hey, Jake, let's just pass the gift ban. Come on, like, why are we doing this? Let's not fight this. Just do it. Be that kind of a voice in his ear. And so we're doing that from really every conceivable angle that we have, because the goal is we're trying to get this one person to do what they know is right, but what they don't want to actually do. And he might not come around. This might be the final boss that's going to hold us back on behalf of all of the lobbyists. And if he chooses to do that, he's going to get voted out of office in a year and a half, because all of his constituents will know that this is the guy protecting corruption. And if this is the hill he wants to go out on, so be it. But we're really hoping he doesn't. And I should say, there's one more thing. Jake Corman, in his mind, he knows if he passes the gift ban, his next job is off the table. He knows that if he goes in and does the work of the people against the work of the lobbyists, then the lobbyists are not going to hire him once he's done being a state senator, which is where he wants to be. So he's really caught between the organized money and us. And previously we've been able to pull those people to our side, and we're hopeful we can do it with him. But just being realistic, he may choose to go out on this issue.
So here's a question. Oh, sorry, Rabbi Diana, you actually started. You go first.
Well, if it's off topic, you can answer it after Rabbi Jonah. But I just wanted to know. Obviously, you've brought up Heschel, but who are other inspiring figures, whether religious or secular, for strategy as well as like moral vision? But why don't you ask yours, Rabbi Jonah, and you can decide which is more.
No, let's take that one. Then I'll...
Alive today, Reverend William Barber is definitely a great tactician and a great strategist, and understands how to build a movement and how to build a movement over time, because this stuff does not happen in 6 months or 6 years. It happens. The timeline for movement building is much longer than that. And he has done an incredible job. He and Reverend Liz Theo Harris from the Cairo Center in New York have done a great job of bringing together a massive coalition of groups from different issue silos. That's really the biggest innovation, is getting the environmentalists to work with labor, to work with the healthcare people, to work with the democracy people, to work with the mass incarceration people, and so on and so on. So he's great. Reverend Barber's a great guy, and yeah, he's doing it. In history, I'm a big fan of Levinas. I'm a big fan of the Musar thinkers, the people who, that ideology of when you see the face of the other, you are ordered and ordained to service. That idea of the face-to-face encounter brings out a sense of responsibility. And then it's easy to contrast that with corruption, as it says in Deuteronomy, blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. And so that money just kind of keeps us from seeing each other. And that's a metaphor that's always really worked for me. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So here's a different question. I mean, just in terms of filling out the picture of Jake Corman could be voted out of office, presumably, I mean, I guess my question is, it's easy to make the point and easy to prove, probably, that Jake Corman is all in favor of the gifts, or rather all opposed to the gifts ban. But speaking with constituents, when there are several thousand people voting, and I feel that there's often a lot of apathy and often a lot of feeling of disconnect from the political, civic, active dynamic that we cherish in this country. What does it look like once you give up on, let's say, Jake Corman, and then you have to go to Jake Corman's district and talk with his constituents and say, you know what this guy's doing?
Yeah, it's 100% support. Again, I've never met anybody outside of Harrisburg who is against the gift ban. And so when talking to his constituents, the opening line we use is usually, do you trust your government? And let me ask you all that. Do you trust your government to do the right thing all or most of the time? In 1964, 78% of Americans said yes. 78% of Americans, 60 years ago, trusted their government. That number is now down below 15%. And it's just been a steady downward chart. So we're pretty sure of the answer to that question before we even ask it. And then start asking them why. Why don't you trust the government to look out for you? And the answer is usually because they're looking out for the corporations, or because they're looking out for Comcast, or because they're looking out for the people who give them money, or because they're looking out for their own reelection, or it's always something selfish and corrupt. That's the reason. And then to kind of go from there and go, yeah, and so how's your kid's school doing? Well, it's underfunded. Okay, why is that? And just start to connect the dots and help people see, because they're taking bribes, they're doing favors for the people giving them the bribes, and the resources to do those favors are coming from the people, coming from the public. We're getting robbed. And we enjoy huge public support, and it's actually quite easy. And then when it comes to how does this affect an election, think about what every politician says when they're running for office. And I mean, every single one of them. I'm going into Washington to clean it up. I'm going to sweep out the corruption. I'm going to take on the special interests. I'm not bought. I'm not sold. I'm going in to drain the swamp. I'm going into blah, 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 because they know that's exactly what the people want to hear. They have no intention of doing it, They know that that's the messaging that works. And so when we go in with that messaging in an authentic way, in a politically independent way, we're not trying to fundraise off you. We're not trying to get your votes. We want you to just help us make corruption illegal. It's pretty easy to organize around this issue.
So for years, we occasionally hear about the idea of public funding of all political campaigns. How does that stand? Is there any value to that?
Absolutely. So that's one of those policies that just gets rebranded every couple of years. So we're on to the phrase democracy dollars. And this is what we're going to be using in PA. And I know the language evolutions get confusing and tiresome at a certain point, but so public campaign financing exists in a few different forms around the country. There's something called the matching fund system, which is if you give a donation under a certain amount of money, so like less than $200, it'll get matched at a 5-to-1 rate from the public treasury. So the candidate gets $1,200 instead of $200. There's a block grant type system where you say, if you can get this many signatures of support, we'll just give you $10,000 to run your campaign with. Then there's the democracy dollars model, which is what we're starting to push here in Pennsylvania. It's going to be a long, tough fight to get it because that's where the money is. And so democracy dollars only exists right now in Seattle. And so in Seattle, what they've done since 2015 is every resident of the city gets 4 $25 vouchers that they can contribute to candidates that they can also vote for. So you can't give one to someone on the other side of the city who's not on your ballot, only people that are on your ballot. And if you decide to take the public money, there's all sorts of restrictions around how much private money you can raise, how you interact with how dark money operates, all those things. And what ends up happening is candidates go around, knock on doors, talk to voters. They say, can I have your vote? And can I have a voucher? And that's it. And that's how they fundraise. That's how they run their campaigns. And it's completely transformed the city of Seattle. They all of a sudden took up affordable housing issues and domestic workers' bill of rights and healthcare issues. They started taxing Amazon, Boeing, Microsoft, all of the big players out there. They were paying zero and now they're not. It also withstood the onslaught of big money because, of course, the Chamber of Commerce and their allies out there came in with $4.5 million in the last city council elections, and they lost every single seat they went for. And they went for every single seat. They tried to completely flip the council with their candidates, and they all lost. The public campaign financing worked. There was a voter in Seattle, just a quote from a newspaper where the voter says, "This is the first time in my life that a politician has talked to me. I feel like I'm Bill Gates right now." And that's the feeling that we want for everyone, because right now they're just talking to Bill Gates. And not even to him, they're talking to his underlings, the person that they send to talk to them. So public democracy dollars would be hugely transformational. It's going to cost a couple $100 million, of course, it costs money. But then the price of corruption is so great, especially in Pennsylvania. We give $250 million a year to the horse racing industry for no real reason at all. We give $1 billion a year in missing revenue because 70% of our large corporations stash their profits in Delaware. So that's why Comcast pays zero. We lose a lot of money through corruption. Just one quick stat, our tax chart here. The top 1% of Pennsylvanians pay 6% of their income in state and municipal taxes, 6% tax rate for the top 1%. The bottom 20% has a tax rate of 13.8%. And the chart is it's like that all the way down. We're the 7th most regressive tax structure in the country. And that's corruption, because rich people go in and carve out loopholes for themselves, and poor people don't. So with public campaign financing, if you make it so that Comcast isn't controlling both sides of the negotiating table, we'll tax them.
Where do you see yourself in 10, 20 years?
Doing this work, doing the same thing. We have up on our website, we have our Money Out, People In policy platform, 23 policies to get us to a democracy. And I think we'll chip away at 2 of them this year. I think we'll get 2 of them done, but that'll leave 21 for, next session, and so on until we get there. These are long fights, and you got to dig in to win them. You got to outlast the forces of corruption.
So you still see yourself in Pennsylvania doing the same state level type of work?
Yep. I'd eventually, I'm just speaking personally, would like to make it back to Maryland where I grew up, but that can wait, you know. Yeah.
We're really about out of time, but I'm really so pleased that we have a recording with your permission, and we could tell people about this, and those of us who haven't been able to join you, I think really need to hear this, to see this, and to learn.
I'd say please do a screening on Jay Corman's golf course. That would be great if you just set up a big projector on the 18th green and screen us there. Yeah, I'll just close with a couple of thoughts here. Please, get involved. Sign up with March on Harrisburg. I know some of you already are. Please support us however you can. And we are always much more interested in organizing. And we'd love to have a chapter in New Hope. We'd love to have a chapter in Upper Bucks County. So if anybody knows anybody who might want to be a chapter leader, we currently have 7 chapters across the state. We have a dozen chapter leaders. That's definitely a bit of a time commitment. We ask a couple hours a week. But if you know anybody who wants to kind of take the lead on organizing something on the ground in your area, please connect them. And I'll say one more thing. You all had Scott Petrie was your state rep for a while, and he this was before the courts redrew the congressional maps. I was in his office explaining to him, here's how gerrymandering is going to go down in 2021. The Democrats are going to be drawing the maps, which they are, and you as a Southeastern Republican, you are going to get drawn out of your district first. You're going to be the first one to go. They're going to take away your seat so fast because the statewide party doesn't care about you, and the Democrats see you as somebody they can easily take over their seat. So you're gone. And he was hearing this for the first time. He hadn't thought through what it was going to look like, 3 years from now. And it was like 3 weeks later that he just retired. He just decided, I'm out. I'm leaving this seat. Why? I'm going to lose it anyway. I'm gone. And he went and became the head of the PPA. And yeah. The Philadelphia Parking Authority. He took that job. Yeah. New Hope politics are fun. All right. Thank you all. This was great.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wish you well.
Keep up the good
God
work.
bless.
Come join us. Come join us in Harrisburg.
We need more potty stops.
Yeah.